afternoon to wherever you are. This is Akshay Kumar from Imagia Corporation. Let me take the honor to thank you all for joining us today. Let's go over a few housekeeping items before we start. I'd like to request you to please mute your phones during the presentation. For all the attendees with questions, we will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. And request you to key in your questions on the WebEx chat to the host. Your questions will be answered sequentially. If we are unable to get to any of your questions due to time constraints, we will respond to them separately over an email. Just to let you know that we will be recording this session and will share it with all the attendees and the registrants. For today's session about data-driven finance for your account receivables operations, we will focus on how to leverage digital technologies to minimize cost per transaction, scale your business, and achieve optimal efficiency with digital credit, collections, and cash applications. We have with us Phyllis Saavedra, Director of Order to Cash Solutions at Imagia Corporation, and John Santimer, Vice President F&A Solutions and Consulting at Conduent. Phyllis has been a very distinguished speaker and has been in the industry for more than 20 years, concentrating in the fields of credit and collections. Over the years, she has held several senior management roles in companies such as Cisco, Aspect, Novelis, SanDisk, and Saba Software. Additionally, she has extensive experience as a consultant in all areas of the order-to-cash lifecycle. While John is a finance transformational professional with over 20 years of experience, as a solutions-focused finance operations and consulting expert, John has extensive experience supporting transformation initiatives for global organizations in US, Europe, and Asia. John comes with a very rich experience leading cross-functional teams and delivering finance and IT transformation initiatives to achieve strategic objectives in organizations that range from Fortune 50 to new startups. Without taking much of your time anymore, let me welcome Phyllis to start the presentation. Over to you, Phyllis. Thank you.
Thanks, Akshay, and welcome everyone, and thank you again for joining us this morning. As Akshay said, if you have any questions, please submit them through the chat, and John and I will try and get to them at the end of the presentation. Before I begin, I just want to tell you a little bit about Imagia, the company that I work for. Imagia has been in business about 14 years. We really specialize in the digitalization and the optimization, automation of all of the order-to-cash functions. We are a software company. We have implemented and deployed our tool at many different companies, as you can see over in the top right, some of our key customers. Again, our whole goal is to make more efficient and intelligent the various finance operations that fall within the order-to-cash accounts receivable life cycle. Today I'm going to talk about a few things. First, the new directive for finance, then a little bit about data-driven order-to-cash transformation, and then, of course, the strategic benefits of utilizing all this data, utilizing digitalization and automation within the order-to-cash accounts receivable roles. So with that, let's get started. When we talk about the new directive for finance operations, the real goal is to understand how the role of managers and executives are changing, as well as how the roles of each of the individual members of the team are changing to be able to accommodate this new directive and certainly get the most value from it. Pardon me. So, you know, people have joined this webinar today for a whole variety of reasons. Some of you may just be intrigued. You want to learn a little bit more about data-driven technologies. Some of you may have a directive that came from an executive or your board of directors that you need to learn more or adopt some of these technologies. Others, you know, may have a finance transformation project in the works, and possibly some of you have been told you need to do more with less. You might have to cut headcount. You might need to scale your business. All of those things probably brought you to us today, and hopefully by the end of this webinar, we'll be able to give you some really good ideas on how to address these things. So as we begin, when you look at the center of the slide, there's some really good questions you should be asking yourselves. So what are some of the benefits that my company can realize from these technologies? Understanding at the outset what the benefits are is very important. You want to know what your ROI is going to be. How can I leverage new advancements in technology? There's a lot of technology, new technology out there. You hear people talk about artificial intelligence, robotic process automation, all these kind of different things. How can you leverage them to best benefit your business? How can I use these order-to-cash analytics to help my company? So what are the drivers in your company? Try and understand what the key performance drivers are. What are the directives that are coming down from the top? What are the analysts saying? How can analytics specifically help your company, and which types of analytics? And then, the thing that we'll probably talk about most at the end is how can I transform my operations? How can I make my operations more efficient? How can I make them more effective? How can I improve cash flow? How can I improve my working capital metrics? And most of all, what you want to be able to get from these technologies is how can I improve shareholder value, and how can I improve the value to my customers? So let's talk a little bit about data-driven order-to-cash transformation specifically. Oops, pardon me, too far. So what is data-driven? What is really the definition of data-driven? Data-driven means the progress in an activity is compelled by data rather than by intuition and personal experience. The key word in here is really progress. You want to make progress in your activities, in your daily activities within your business by using all of that data. Accounts receivable order to cash is a hub of data. There's tons of information that you can get from the business, order information, credit information, risk information, all of those things using that information. What are data-driven organizations? Managing business performance, process outcomes, and people behavior using insights derived from data. We're going to talk a lot about these insights when we talk about analytics in some of the coming slides. And bringing the nexus of forces. So bringing all of these things together, digital, data management, analytics, automation, RPA, bringing all these technologies together so that you can gain insights into your business, and you can certainly improve and operationalize all these different components of the business to make you more efficient, effective, and certainly, improve things like cash flow. Pardon me. So a Deloitte article talks really about what will the role of the CFO look like in 2020. The role of the CFO historically has been one of reporting, of providing information about what's happening in the business. But the world is changing, and the role of the CFO is actually changing to a point where they need to be able to leverage technology in order to gain mobility in the business, in order to be able to use all the technologies that are out there to manage risk, to make the business run more effectively, to be able to incorporate all of this within the corporate strategy. So what does today's order-to-cash accounts receivable department look like? Most order-to-cash departments are very complex. What you see on the screen kind of gives you a visualization of what's going on. There's a lot of different departments. There's disparate groups. Everything is very complex. It's siloed. The operations are not running together. You might have a lot of different locations. You might operate, you might be part of a multinational organization where you've got a lot of different operations. You might have a lot of different ERP or legacy systems you're running on. You might have grown by merger or acquisition, so you've got a lot of different processes and you've got a lot of different tools. It's a very complex organization, and the key to being successful in these organizations is understanding how you can centralize and see all this information in one place, how you can gain insights from it, and how you can really automate and digitalize all that information that's out there to make you an efficient, streamlined organization. So when we talk about finance transformation and digitalization, it's important to know what the executives are looking at or looking for today. You know, what you see on the screen is, you know, there's a lot of pressure on the AR teams. What are the executives putting this pressure on them for? Number one, to improve cash flow. Not just improve cash flow, but also to be able to predict how much is coming in, when it's coming in, so that the executives, your controllers, your CFO, your CEO, your board knows how they can spend that money and where they might need to save money. As it's been for years, these departments are also being asked to reduce DSO, reduce days outstanding. In other words, minimize the sales turn. Why are they being asked that? Why does that continue to be an age-old issue for these departments? Because every day a sale is out there, it's costing your business more and more money. So when we talk about these new technologies, we talk about what people are looking for, we really look to be able to find tools, to be able to find ways, to be able to transform your business, to be able to improve the cash, minimize these metrics like DSO, and then additionally doing things like managing risk, minimizing write-offs to things like bad debt and all of those kind of things, improve transaction efficiency. The functions that fall within the accounts receivable organization are heavily manual, they're heavily transactional. There are any number of ways, as you'll see later in the presentation, that you can actually improve the efficiency of the business and improve your cash flow just by automating some of these very manual transactions. Also important to know is what can work, what are the drivers of what can and will work in transformation and what need to be the drivers of it. Here at Imaja, we really talk about the 4 C's of order to cash transformation. Primarily, the first being cost. When we talk about digitalization, we talk about transformation, we want to look at reducing the cost of the operation. How can I do more with less? How can I automate to make the team efficient? If I need to reduce headcount or I need to grow without adding headcount, how can I reduce these costs? Control, reducing cycle time. How can I speed up the time to get cash in the business? How can I speed up my customer onboarding? Customers that get, you know, there have been many, many surveys out there that show that customers that have an easy process to be brought on board are happier customers. They tend to come back more frequently for sales, and they tend to have higher customer satisfaction scores. So cycle times, whether it's on the customer side or whether it's on the cash flow side. One of the things that's always important and that we should not forget when we start looking at these new technologies is compliance. Whether you fall under audit compliance, Sarbanes-Oxley compliant, you need to look at transformation that can also be aligned with the compliance and regulatory needs of your company. And finally, you know, I've said it many times, and I'll probably say it 10, 20 more times in this presentation, what can improve cash flow? Cash is the lifeblood of every organization. We need to be able to bring it in faster. We need to be able to use it to grow the business. Cash is, you know, no matter how technologically advanced we get, cash is still king within every organization. Come on. All right. So what are the core technologies that help us to achieve this transformation? The first one that we look at is big data. The ability to centralize these large amounts of data that you've got in your company. Companies today have years and years of data, whether it's structured data or unstructured data. We want to be able to utilize this data, pull it in, and be able to have a repository to which we can make use of all this information to help us get to a more modern and advanced organization. In addition to big data, and sort of, alongside of big data, I would say, is analytics. There are various types of analytics. There's predictive, prescriptive, as well as, the historic type of analytics that report things that are going on today. You pull all this data in, you've got large pools of data, you want to get insights on it. You want to be able to use analytics, dashboards, visualizations, so that you can gain insights into what's going on in your business. And finally, digital automation. Utilizing, built on a structure of big data, you're getting insights. Now you need to be able to operationalize these things. You want to be able to automate many components of your business. Manual tasks that have historically been done, you can automate these. You can make your company far more efficient. We, as a company, traditionally try and look at getting to a place of 80% automation. As I said previously, the accounts receivable order-to-cash functions are heavily manual. They're heavily transactional roles. If you can automate 80% of that, and you can free up your teams to be doing more thought-provocative, more highly, thinking type roles, more focus on those kind of activities, you're going to be able to achieve all of the goals that you need to get to. So when we talk about all of this, we really recommend a data-driven approach to order to cash. What is it? We talked about what data-driven is, meaning we want to be able to utilize all the data that's in the organization. We want to eliminate the silos. We want to be able to have a single source of truth in our business. On the AR order-to-cash type roles, what that means is whether you've got one or multiple systems, whether you've got a variety of business units or countries you're operating from, you want to eliminate that. You want to be able to get a global picture of your AR that you can use to minimize risk, you can use to gain insights in your business, to provide reporting and things like that. You want to then be able to turn that data into insights, into decisions within your business. So how does all of this, being able to get the big picture on what's going on in your business, can help you understand customer payment behavior? It can help you look at DSO patterns and things like that. We often use our tools to be able to do things like gaining reports on collector efficiency. So deciding, where do I place my collectors? Where should they be spending the most time? Looking at deductions and short pays and chargebacks within your business, seeing what types are coming in, operationalizing this data so that I can redeploy people within the entire business, perhaps on product failures or salespeople that are not efficient or processes that are not efficient. And then finally, digitalizing and automating to the core. Start with your high impact areas. Each of you needs to analyze your own business, look at it, and see what are the areas that are going to have the greatest impact on your business. Are you struggling with cash flow? Are you struggling with working capital metrics? Are you getting low customer satisfaction scores from customers because of your onboarding process? Look at these, and these are great places to start and start considering things like workflows and task lists and making use of processes like RPA and the like. So when we talk about this, we talk really about 3 steps in the process. And the first step, as I mentioned earlier, is bringing all of your order-to-cash data together. We think, it's very important to have a unified data platform, whether it's a big data platform or a central hub where you're pulling all the information in on your accounts receivable, whether it's from one system or several entities, pulling it all into a central hub, providing you with that single source of truth for your AR, giving you views into your customers. You want to be able to manage your customers in a hierarchical fashion, managing credit risk and things like that at the parent level, being able to make decisions about your customers, whether it's who's going to be collecting that money, how you're going to assign credit limits, all of that. If you have a single view of your customer and your receivables, it makes all these decisions much more easy. It's not to say that you can't break them down into a transactional level, but you want to be able to see it on both sides. So from the very detailed to the extreme summary level. I talked a little bit about customer master governance when I talk about parent-child hierarchy. You want to be able to map these things. You want to be able to see all your data in a single place, see all your customers in a single hub. Whether you've got a customer that's residing over several different time zones or several different countries, it's important to be able to have that centralized view. And then it's important as well is to be able to have an ability to extract that data, report that data, be able to pull it out, whether it's in a reporting tool, a dynamic reporting tool, an Excel-based reporting tool, or an analytics hub, being able to extract that information and gain insights into that information. So the second step we talk about is gaining insights. I talked a little bit about, the type, of analytics that are out there. And, in terms of accounts receivable, there are a lot of different insights you can gain into your business, whether it comes from a descriptive nature, predictive, prescriptive, or a cognitive nature. There are analytics that you're pulling in and dashboards that are available, whether it's executive reporting, it's close reporting, whether you want to gain insights on your DSO, how efficient your collectors are, how your cash flow is going. All of these various types of analytics are available and are there to help you really understand and manage your order-to-cash performance. So the types of areas that we really think are key and essential in the order-to-cash area really fall under the different components of order-to-cash. Things that you should consider when you start looking at your business and start trying to determine, well, what kind of analytics do I need? This is really great. Phyllis was telling me I need to get insights into my business, but what would be of use? Specifically, in the order arena, things like cycle time, margin analysis, cost effectiveness, those kind of things. When we talk about credit, risk analysis, you'd like to be able to look, whether it's country risk or it's regional risk, utilization, credit limit utilization in terms of sales, using these kind of analytics to help drive future business. There are receivables analytics, things like, turnover and payment term analysis. It's really good to be able to look at your customers' payment terms. So if I've got a bunch of customers that are net 30 and my net 30 customers are all paying, around 45 days, but my net 90 customers all tend to pay on time, that's going to tell you something about your business. I could go through all these. Again, we'll have the PowerPoint and presentation available. I think, as you start to think about how you want to utilize analytics in your business, I think you need to, as I said at the outset, What are the key drivers of your business? Are your issues right now falling under the header of cash application? Is it credit risk management? Is it your collections operations? When you start looking at those, then you start considering what types of analytics you need. You can use these to either assess the business and see where you need to make your changes, so you can use them at the front end. You can also utilize these at the back end to see how your performance is doing. So I talked about 3 different types of analytics. I just want to, give you a quick definition of what each type is, because they are very different and each serves a very different need within the business. Descriptive analytics are kind of what we think about as your daily reporting, your executive dashboards. Your executive may come to you and say, I want to come in the morning, I want to push a button, and I want to see all of my AR at a glance. These really help you understand what has historically happened in your business and why it's happened. It helps you to aggregate things like the KPIs. You can see DSO, you can see aging buckets, you can see how collectors have performed. It helps you to manage things like SLAs, service management within your business. All of these things would fall under the guise of descriptive analytics. The second type are predictive analytics. What are predictive analytics? Well, it's just like what it seems, it's a crystal ball. They will tell you based on machine learning and these, sort of complex algorithms, what is going to happen in your business. So you can use these. It's really important in AR to utilize these to help you drive proactive behavior. If my analytics are predicting high DSO, before I get to that point, I can start looking at these customers, I can start analyzing why they're not paying on time, and drive proactive business within your organization. So using the future predictions to actually change what's going to happen in the future, it becomes a very important part of managing the order-to-cash life cycle. And finally, the analytics that people probably, are looking for most, these are the kind of analytics that we probably get the most requests for as of late, and these are the prescriptive analytics. What should I do? How do I get to where what I want to happen? We can use these to drive strategies in the business, to help drive the resources within, say, a shared service environment, how to optimize things like cash flow and minimize risk. So you're kind of using, it sort of combines all what happened historically, what it's predicting, and it's telling you the kind of things that you should be doing to improve your performance. It really is the true game changer when you talk about analytics. So there's a strong need within the business, especially within the accounts receivable function, to map your performance plan and figure out what do I need to do to achieve this performance. Whether your goals are cost management, control within the business, changing your customers' behavior, how do I map out exactly what I need to do to change this and optimize the performance of my business? So with that, we talk about the third step. And the third step is really key in changing what happens within the business. This is what we call the components of automation. It happens to be a specialty of our company. This is what we do. We automate, operationalize, and digitalize the various functions within the credit-to-cash life cycle. So the various things, you can look at automating, whether it's your onboarding process. You can digitalize your credit onboarding process, from credit applications to credit scoring. Your receivables, looking for tools that have electronic invoices and statements that allow you to analyze your customers and predict cash flow forecasting. Driving strategies within collections is another great way to digitalize and automate the process. Managing your deductions. Earlier I mentioned looking at your deductions so that you can do reason code analysis and drive change in the business. And operationalizing and automating things like cash application. Finding a tool that links to your bank or third-party system, and automating a process that has historically been extremely manual. So when we look at these areas that make up the order-to-cash life cycle, you know, the first one that we talk about in terms of smart automation is receivables. As I mentioned, there are many areas that you can automate within the receivables life cycle. So first off, you know, automating your agings. Looking at tools that will automate and give you the ability to analyze your aging, predict DSO, predict payments, send invoices and statements electronically. Gone are the days of somebody sitting in a mailroom and mailing out an invoice or a billing statement. That should all be done in an automated fashion. We should be redeploying all these mailroom people to tasks, again, that are more thought-provocative. It's, you know, you want to improve the access to information for you and your customer. You want to make it readily available. If I want to see an aging, or I want to see a DSO forecast or a cash forecast, if my customer wants to be able to pull up all this information, it's important that they have it right at their fingertips, and that it doesn't, as a customer told me the other day, it takes them 30 hours to run an aging. Those people cannot see customers that have paid on a daily basis. It's important to have an automated tool that will give you instant access to what your receivables are today, and give your customers instant access to be able to see all the information around that. The next area is the credit process. Credit onboarding, as I said, should be an easy process. Look for a tool that is entirely digital. Your customers should be able to access an online credit application. References, trade and bank should be checked digitally. They should integrate with third-party credit bureaus and do automated scoring. Rules should be set up so that you only have to manage the high-risk customers. Low-risk customers should automatically go through a workflow process, be fed through, and be given credit limits. Like I said, 80% of your credit business should be part of an automated tool these days. Oops, sorry, my system just froze up. Next is the collections process. Collections process is one of those areas that I like to say you get the most bang for your buck with automation. The collections process is really setting up strategies within your accounts receivable, automating it so that collectors only have to see a task list of things they need to do today, only focusing on those high-touch customers, those high-touch tasks, those high-risk tasks. Everything else in the business should be automated. 20% of their business should be appearing in these task lists, and those should be the customers that you're managing. If you have a customer that pays on time every single month just by sending them an invoice, a collector should not be wasting their time making a call to that customer. That should all be automated. They should be calling the customers that historically pay late or need additional information to pay. Along with collections comes the dispute process. If you have a business that has short pays, that chargebacks, a lot of deductions in the payment process, you want to look for a tool to automate these disputes. Not only just being able to provide reason codes so that you can report on it and change the behavior in your business, but you want something that will workflow the entire credit memo process. You want to be able to send them through the business so that they can be cleared up very quickly. Again, customers tend to pay more quickly when their credit memos are issued fast, when their issues are resolved more timely. it improves customer satisfaction, and it, again, brings people back to your business for those repeat customers that we're all looking for. One of the last things that is the self-service portal. The self-service portal is what you call an electronic invoice payment and presentment portal. This is one of those newer modules that we find people asking a lot about. Customers don't necessarily want to talk to the accounts receivable department. They want to be able to go into a system 24/7, pull down their own invoices, dispute their own issues, make payments, and do everything in an automated self-service type of way. So if this is an issue, if you see your customers complaining about things like this, consider a tool with a self-service portal. Last is the cash application automation. Cash application is exactly what it sounds like. You want, look for an automation tool. If you've got a lot of people that are manually entering cash receipts, if you have a lot of errors in your cash receipts, if you have a lot of transactions, this is a really good area to consider automating within the business. Most tools get to a place of automating over 92% of the receipts that come in, so you're only managing a small percentage of the business. So again, the key to automation is getting to a place where you can automate 80 to 90% of your business, leaving the rest of that business for more thought-provocative types of tasks. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to John to go to the next part of our presentation.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, there you go. Okay, thank you, Phyllis. I appreciate the insight into what Amagia does, and as always, I'm increasingly impressed with the functionality and the thought leadership that Amagia has begun to put into the product. As I said in the beginning, I'm responsible for finance and accounting solutions at Conduent. And I just want to spend a few minutes really shifting the focus here to talk about, really to focus on the how. How are we doing things, or how should things be being done as you're thinking about transforming your business, especially related to the order-to-cash space. So I've included this slide here. It's actually a Gartner slide, but I thought it was very telling that transformational change is really hard work. The biggest threat to innovation is actually the cultural change, the cultural impact that it has, and to reimagine your business, you really have to be willing to let go of a lot of the fundamental thinking that historically takes place with respect to control, governance, motivation, and change management. So, a lot of the things that Phyllis talked about, in the earlier in her presentation, myself and my organization are really focused on working with companies like Amagia to help companies embrace this and to implement this. Just a little bit about Conduent. We were actually formed, most people haven't heard of us. We were formed January 1st of 2017. We actually used to be a part of Xerox, where I think of us as a $6 billion startup. Our part of the business is nowhere nearly that big, but we're still working under the parent, a decent-sized organization. We have about 5,000 employees working around the globe. We have about 1,000 people, 20 or so % of our people involved in order-to-cash activities, and we're looking at Amagia to begin to help us grow that to an even bigger percentage of our business. Here we go. Yeah. When we talk about the the digital office, I think that's a buzzword that's beginning to kind of creep into the lexicon really across business and across the finance and accounting space. But just as a point of context here, every day, according to IBM, the world creates 2.5 quintillion bytes of data. I don't know how many zeros that is, but I think it's a heck of a lot. So what we're seeing at the enterprise level is an increasing focus around digital when it comes to finance, and I think Phyllis and Imagia are really beginning to embrace that. You heard a lot of the conversation in the analytics space about focusing on digital. If your company was born in the cloud, like Uber, for example, where everything runs seamlessly and it's integrated, and you don't have any collection issues, right? Because everything happens instantaneously. That's great. But most of us don't have that benefit, and most of us are working in a more traditional environment. But we'd all like to be able to get to the same kind of point as where we live in the cloud and everything is digital. So what we're really migrating to is an environment where automation becomes native to the entire conversation, that decisions are made on predicting events, not merely reacting to history. So what we're then focusing on is, from a transformational perspective, we're looking at really a complete re-engineering of how we think about doing business, and really kind of abandoning a lot of the traditional perspectives. So how do we capitalize on this? Is we begin to focus a lot more on analytics and automation. Now, there's an analyst company out there that some of you may have heard of, maybe some of you have not. It's called Horses for Sources. They're kind of an up-and-coming Gartner, Forrester type of firm, but basically in one of their recent surveys of the global 2,000 companies, their survey confirmed that 98% of those global 2,000 companies have some element of an automation strategy that they're currently deploying. Now, when you think about how can I begin to drive significant value from the Imagia tools or from other digital or automation type tools, you're looking at improving your delivery offering. You're looking at improving your policy and governance processes. You're looking at really looking at tools like Imagia to really give you kind of an end-to-end process management view. And certainly, you're looking at a best practices type of model. Well, when we looked at at tools like these, our point of view is that the smart automation and the process digitization is really going to be on where you're going to drive the most significant value from the conversation. So companies like Imagia and Conduent are really helping companies on this journey. These are not, in some cases, immediate savings or values, but I think if you look at it from a partnership perspective, automation is certainly going to be enabling how we transform to the next level. Now, from a capabilities perspective, Conduent is involved in really all of the end-to-end solutions, from source to pay, order to cash, and record to report. But today, we clearly want to stay focused on the order to cash business. I think that on this slide here, this looks very similar to what Phyllis showed a few minutes ago. But what I want to call out, though, is that from a transformational perspective, that these activities run generally sequentially from left to right. The primary pain points tend to be on the right side: collection, disputes, cash applications, and that's where Amasia certainly has developed some automation and some tools that are very powerful. So those are the primary pain points. But what we're seeing is that you can't look at the back end without also looking at the front end, because typically the root cause of a lot of the problems is actually on the front end. So we encourage companies and our clients to focus on getting the quote management, getting the risk management, getting the order management right on the front end, and that actually eliminates some of the pain on the back end. I think that some of the tools, for example, that Phyllis talked about in terms of just in the managing credit space can go a long way in ensuring that, well, you're not going to have the same collection problems that you might have today if you were better managing the risk management and credit management stuff on the front end. So just something to think about as you're thinking about deploying some of these solutions. So this is a graphic that I think is kind of interesting. It's really kind of a 3D view of working capital. Now what's interesting here is that there's nothing, if you will, kind of end-to-end about this, right? There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of interactions between different parts of the organization, whether it's the sales channels or the operations coming out of accounting or the systems coming out of IT or your interactions with banks and risk management. So the factors that influence working capital go well beyond the boundaries of your traditional order-to-cash processes. And the gaps in any one of these can have a significant impact on your working capital. So when we work with clients, this slide summarizes at a very, very high level the approach that we typically follow with all of our clients. And obviously the first step is understanding what the problem is. So in the typical situation, you say, well, the problem would be real simple. We've got a problem either in our collection space, or we're doing all of this manual activity, or the orders that we have are coming in incorrectly. Well, you really have to stay focused on really understanding what the root cause analysis really becomes. We had one client that I've worked on recently where we determined that the real problem wasn't necessarily on the collection side, but it was actually on the order processing side, because there was a significant amount of bad data on the order side. So understanding what that end-to-end process looks like and getting to an agreement around the approach can actually begin to help you focus on the end-to-end process from a much more digital and technology perspective. But once you have that mapped out, then deploying tools like Amasia can really become a game changer for companies. Just a little bit here in terms of just understanding what the typical approaches would look like. Obviously, we end up breaking them down into what I consider to be growth options, efficiency options, and effectiveness options. And obviously, effectiveness gets to what's impacting my customer, what's impacting the quality of the work that I do, and how can I improve that. In the middle category, efficiency focuses on eliminating waste and going through Lean or Six Sigma type activities. And then the growth opportunities are really things that are barriers to you being able to grow your business, whether it's having enough capacity or being able to effectively manage your risk. All of these then get involved in prioritizing the solutions that you might want to put together in terms of moving forward with your transformation. From a strategic perspective, we're talking about moving well beyond cost cutting. If you've already done this, if your organization has already been involved in the traditional cost cutting. There really is nothing more that you can cut. You know, I've seen organizations that keep trying to cut and cut and cut, but the cost of that actually turns into a negative impact because they are actually cutting elements that are inherently required to actually grow the business. If you haven't gotten to a point of any kind of a cost-cutting activity, there would be no point in even focusing on the traditional approach when there are so many approaches now that have a digital focus, that are much more highly scalable, that produce better value and really focus on positioning the company much better from a strategic perspective. So I mentioned a little bit earlier, you know, some of the pain points that were involved in the order to cash and working capital space, and I know that Phyllis had covered off on some of these, but clearly the things that we have been able to help companies with successfully is really focusing on write-offs, on unresolved deductions and disputes. I mean, dispute management and deduction management can be a very painful process, as you would know if you're on this call. You know, the manual handoffs and interfaces between multiple ERPs and any kind of non-value related activity are things that we focus on clients and trying to eliminate. And one comment I would make here is that a lot of the activities in automating the process recently have tried to employ robotics, but even some of those activities tend to be, if you will, more tactically focused robots. And I think that what we're seeing now coming into the marketplace are tools like Imagia that really have embedded robotics and embedded machine learning that actually eliminate more of the manual effort as opposed to just taking kind of an incremental approach. So this page here just summarizes some of the examples that we've seen in terms of being able to to work with our clients. First and foremost, in the accounts receivable space, significant reductions in overdue DSOs. You know, bad debt reserve numbers that are a fraction of what they had typically been in the past. Unallocated cash, less than 1%. Reducing the number of cash application FTEs by up to 40%. You know, there's so much automation that can take place now in the cash application space that it's pretty amazing with even with unstructured data. We're seeing the ability to really manage that much more effectively, and a turnaround time of less than 2 days on 95% of all customer care interactions. So I think all of these things go to improving working capital, and they also go to really improving the customer experience, especially when you employ a portal, as what Phyllis had mentioned before. So I think those are just, to me, some of the highlights of some of the things that we've been able to to provide for some of our clients. And when you can do all of these things effectively, that visual that I showed you previously looks a lot different when everything connects together in a seamless manner with efficient treasury operations and robust cash flow and an integrated IT technology and AR environment. So, and I like to close with just maybe a little of a provoking thought here, is that the world is changing very fast. As I've even worked with the Imagia team here for the last couple of years, the advancements in technology that I've seen coming out of this group have just been amazing. And but this is a cartoon on the left that was published in 2014. And in 2014, big data, that was just a buzzword. I mean, we kind of all heard it, but we didn't really know what you do with it and who was involved in it. So this cartoon kind of gets to the point of, you know, we're going to solve this problem by using big data that none of us have the slightest idea either what it is or what to do with it. But when you fast forward to today, everything is cloud enabled. That means that you can really manage massive amounts of data. Amazon Web Services, I mean, they advertise on television. You know, they were on the baseball game and the football game the other day, and I saw it at the airport when I was flying to San Jose yesterday. So it's, you know, these kind of things become really part of the domain. You've got Watson's, you know, sitting everywhere, and really machine learning and AI, which are really the biggest disruptors for big data analytics, are embedded in applications like Imagia. So I think that, you know, it's an exciting time, but I think the world is changing really fast, and we really need to think about how we embrace that and how we begin to transform, you know, in that context. So just to kind of wrap up from my perspective, that automation and analytics are really changing solutions and behaviors. There's a significant potential for you know, working capital improvements in most companies. Even if you think you're in a good place, there's a pretty good chance that you can even move the bar even farther. And you know, pilots and assessments for these kind of you know, reviews, they can actually be accomplished in a matter of weeks in a fairly non-invasive manner. And cloud-based solutions are making the implementation of any of these kind of solutions much more quickly and much less painful than they would have been in the past. And the advantage of that is that you can begin to accrue some business benefits fairly quickly. You know, longer term, it's a long transformation journey, but the payback begins to start fairly early in the process. And with that, I will turn it back to Akshay, and if there's any questions.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Phyllis. We have a few more minutes, so we'll look for any questions that the attendees have for us.
So we have one question through chat. And the question is, you know, where would be a good place to start? We have initiatives in our business, and where would be a good place to start? You know, I think John and I both talked a lot about analytics. I think you kind of know the areas of your business, and it really is business specific. So are your issues credit, or your issues cash flow, working capital? And if you're not sure where your issues are, starting with something like some general receivables analytics, or, you know, a consulting firm coming in and sort of assessing what you've got is a really good place to start from an overall approach, and then starting to look at the various automation areas and components in order to move forward.
So just to let you remind that in case if you have any questions, you can put the questions in the chat box for the host.
Okay, I think we have another question that came in for John.
Yes. So the question really has to do with you know, from an end-to-end perspective. You know, what are you really finding is the you know, the key pain points, and can you clarify on some of that? You know, and I think what you know, what we're seeing is that the I think as Phyllis kind of had indicated earlier, that you know, the collection management process is one that can really be highly automated, and that can really glean out or lean out a lot of inefficiency in the business. And from a from the automation that's available from a dispute management perspective, I think it has really beginning to transform that space as well, just in terms of being able to eliminate a lot of the back and forth interactions that are frustrating to consumers.
Okay, I think with that, we have hit the top of the hour.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks, Phyllis. Phyllis, if we can move one more slide ahead, we have some contact information wherein the audience can look at. For any more information and demos, please feel free to write to us at info@imagia.com or call in at 1-866-IMAGIA-1, or you can also try and connect with Phyllis Saavedra. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.